while we're looking at that strike, we're looking at those protesters. We don't know what's going to come out of those conversations with the police that we have just shown you. But disturbing conditions have also been uncovered at Daybreak chicken broiler farms, where the NSPCA reports thousands of birds have died or had to be put down due to a lack of food. In some cases, birds tend to cannibalism in a desperate bid to survive. To tell us more about what they have found, we're now joined by Nazareth Appalsamy from the National Council of SPCA's Farm Animal Protection Unit. Nazareth, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Give us a bit of background. You did visit this project where I don't know whether it was after receiving complaints or it was in the normal course of doing your work. Give us a bit of background first to your visit to the farm.
Thank you for having me. So we did receive a complaint, but earlier this year in February, we had a similar complaint where we found also birds cannibalizing and lack of feed, which resulted in criminal charges. We now recently uncovered further cruelty, which started on the 25th of April. And yesterday, we basically finished culling. More than 350,000 birds were culled, and over 500,000 had to be moved after Daybreak failed to feed these birds. Our investigation, we found birds cannibalizing each another, birds severely underweight, and thousands of mortalities that were not removed from houses. The stench was unbearable. Workers were not paid, and huge welfare concerns.
So clearly, a lot has been going wrong here. What happened from the time you first discovered that all was not well? Because for you to then go back and discover that the situation has gotten even worse, questions have to be asked about what happened the first time you discovered that a lot was going wrong.
Yeah, so when we did discover in February that there were farms that were having this problem, warnings were issued and a criminal docket was opened. And for a while, they stabilized with providing feed. We did follow-up inspections on all their facilities. Some contract growers stopped receiving birds, and the problems went away for a very short period. When the criminal docket was registered, the CEO and his top executive resigned. And then thereafter, we received complaints about Daybreak, which prompted us to investigate. The recent complaint, which we received on the 25th of April, uncovered that a total shutdown of operations by Daybreak with regards to feed procurement.
Now, whose job is it to act on information that you gather and produce?
So if the NSPCA receives a complaint, we are bound by law to investigate. And unfortunately, we would have expected that the contract growers would have blown the whistle and said to the NSPCA that Daybreak is not providing feed and that we should look into the matter. But however, that was not the case. And some birds were starved for more than 7 days. And this is huge welfare concern pertaining to the weight and the mortalities that were uncovered.
But you've been speaking to them, you've raised all the relevant issues with them, but what have been their responses? How do they explain the situation that this company is sadly finding itself in?
So remember, I think it's also in the public domain, it's on the internet that Daybreak Foods did apply for further lending from PIC, which was rejected. And I think this is what basically resulted in them not being able to supply feed to contract growers and their own farms. As a result, the birds suffered, and because of the weights, they were not able to slaughter them. So they had birds now that could not be slaughtered, exceeded the 28-day slaughter age, and now running into millions with regards to the cost of feed. So, in essence, basically, the birds were deprived of feed due to financial constraints by Daybreak.
Then often in situations like these, if past experience, history is anything to go by, the people who are responsible for the mess often would want someone to throw money at the problem instead of dealing with the underlying issues that are being raised. And these could range from poor or bad management to neglect to even corruption, as some of the workers are suggesting. So it's often very difficult to take the company's word for it. In other words, in this instance, to say the PIC is to blame because it didn't give them the money that they asked for.
So we're not blaming the PIC. We've just said that it has been reported that the PIC rejected the loan. As far as we are concerned, and the information we have been given, is that Daybreak themselves has run into financial constraints. And this is why they could not procure feed. And as a result, they allowed the NSPCA or permitted the NSPCA to cull their birds.
But then, I mean, I know this is probably not your turf, but on the account of the workers, management is continuing with business as though it's business as usual. They're paying themselves their salaries, but while they're not giving the workers their salaries. Again, on the account of workers, a lot of this could have been prevented had the management done its work properly. In other words, the situation would not have reached the crisis proportions that it has since raised. It will be interesting to know whether you actually have a sense of, or you asked you also had an opportunity to perhaps ask some questions that would be, I would imagine, commonsensical or logical questions to ask in situations like these.
So absolutely. So I can confirm that a lot of the sites, the workers have not been paid. I cannot confirm whether senior management or executive management have still been on the payroll. But what is evident is that the fact that mortalities had not been removed from houses is an indication that workers were not willing to work without being compensated.
Where to from next on your side?
The NSPCA is currently compiling a docket. We will now be taking action against the board. In February, we took action against management, but now with this docket, we will be charging the board of directors.
Hopefully, some questions will be answered once you do that. Let me thank you very much for your time, Nazareth Appalsamy, from the National Council of SPCA's Farm Animal Protection